Hi, this is State Senator Jason Rapert, and I just wanted to reach out and give you a brief word of encouragement today. Obviously, the United States Supreme Court has issued a decision today that is reverberating around this nation from coast to coast and shore to shore. Yes, I know it's a very sad decision for people that have always appreciated the bedrock of our society, which is the institution of marriage. You know, marriage, the family unit, has truly been the bedrock of American society and civilization from the very beginning. We all know that statistically, little kids do better in homes with mothers and fathers, and that's the way that it has always been. But today, 5 unelected Supreme Court justices decided to trample federalism in our nation. They trampled the 10th Amendment in our nation. They took a strike against religious liberty in our nation in the First Amendment. And in my opinion, they have violated one of the fundamental principles of federalism in our country. And I must say, before I was ever in the Arkansas Senate, I was ordained as a minister. I was a minister when I was elected. People knew my values. They knew what I stood up for. I'm ordained. I preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I believe fundamentally in religious liberty in this country. Not everyone chooses to be a Christian. That's their decision. But in this nation, we were predicated, we were built, we were founded upon the notion that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And what has happened today and also yesterday, when the Supreme Court literally looked at a few words in a statute passed by Congress and said that when they said a state exchange, that they indeed did not mean a state exchange. I don't know how anyone could make such a decision. I have a message for the Supreme Court of the United States of America. You should have more respect for the offices that you hold in this nation. Regardless of your political decisions, you have been given a valuable honor to sit as one of 9 Supreme Court justices in our nation. You have lifetime terms. But I'm here today to tell you that you cannot continue to usurp the will of the people in this nation and violate fundamental principles of the United States Constitution and the rule of law in this country. I am ashamed of your decision, because your decision has just told 96.8% of the people in this country, 96.2% of the people in this country that are heterosexual, that 3.8% of this country's personal opinions weigh more than yours do. What kind of nation is this when a Supreme Court will try to cram down the throat of the American people an ideology that they fundamentally have opposed? Some have said, but Jason, polling says this or that. We are not a nation of polls. We are not a nation of opinions. We are a nation of laws. And those laws have been settled by a majority of this country over time immemorial. And I believe that this particular decision is one of the worst decisions that I know I have ever seen in my lifetime. I believe the U.S. Supreme Court has lost its grounding. If you read in the Constitution, and I've been reading through it today, you open this Constitution up to Article 3, you'll find that the courts were never given authority in the Constitution to rule that an act of Congress or a state statute is unconstitutional. What they have done is, by a ruling they made themselves, being the Supreme Court in Marbury versus Madison, they empowered themselves with what they believe is the power to rule something unconstitutional. It should have been corrected immediately by the executive branch and the legislative branch at that time, but they let it go. And what's happened over time in this country, we now have a situation where one judge in one state, in some instances, 3 judges in appellate court somewhere in other instances, and now 5 unelected, appointed judges to our U.S. Supreme Court say they know better than tens of millions of Americans around this nation. I'm very disappointed in that. Now, I will say also, I have no particular desire to see homosexuals ostracized. I do not want to see them hurt. I do not want to see them lose their peace and tranquility in life. But up until a few years ago, marriage was never an issue. And activist organizations like the Human Rights Campaign, they decided that they would come after marriage. And I would have to say they've been quite successful for such a small minority group in our nation. They have used tactics of intimidation, of bullying, of boycotting, and they have had corporate boards folding all over this nation, and in the past couple of years have done a real fine job of intimidating the legislative system and using the courts to bully their way to their end result. The fact of the matter is, in our own state, in the state of Arkansas, 75% of the Arkansas people voted, and we have an amendment to the Arkansas Constitution that says marriage is between one man and one woman. The fact is, the federal government was only given powers that were laid out in this Constitution. And in this Constitution it says in the 10th Amendment that all powers that have not been granted to the federal government by the states reside with the states and with the people. And this decision violates states' rights. Marriage has never been defined in the U.S. Constitution, and marriage has never been defined at the federal level. It has been a states' rights issue. And what we have today is a strike against federalism, a strike against the Constitution itself with the 10th Amendment, and a strike against religious liberty. And it will ultimately be a strike against free speech as well. What is the country preacher to do when he decides to preach on Sodom and Gomorrah? What is he to do when he preaches out of Romans chapter 1, or he reads from the book of Jude, when the Bible says that homosexuality is an abomination? Is that now going to be hate speech? Some of you say no, it would never be. But in the nation of Canada in 2005, when they passed same-sex marriage, it wasn't long until people began to see, and now we know, that preachers are told they can't say anything negative about homosexuality in Canada at all at this time. Where is free speech? That's not tolerance, my friends. That is intimidation, bullying, and squelching of the freedom of people to speak up for their own religious faith and their own liberties. Now, what do we do from here? There are a lot of people that may feel discouraged that they would give up. But I would be here to tell you today that this is not a time to give up. It's a time to wake up. You see, I happen to believe that watching a sleeping giant awaken is an awesome thing. People say, well, people haven't done anything. We've allowed things to go too far. What I think has happened is that Americans really thought fundamentally that the arrogance that we've seen from liberal activist judges and the Obama administration would never interrupt some of our fundamental liberties and principles. But they certainly have done that very thing. And so here's who I'm calling out to today. I'm calling out to every single red-blooded American, every single Christian in this nation. I don't care if you are Methodist, if you are Episcopalian, if you are Presbyterian, you're Baptist, Catholics. I'm calling on everyone, Pentecostals. I'm calling on all of you. Look to your faith. You cannot comply with unjust laws in this nation. We are now in a position where in 1973, the Supreme Court said it was legal to kill innocent babies in this country. And now this country has taken 60 million innocent lives through abortion. And now today, we have a decision that goes against direct scriptural teaching about marriage between a man and a woman, and also the abomination of homosexuality. Now, I am calling on you spiritually, and I am also calling upon you politically. This ruling goes against the spiritual character of the nation, but it also goes against the political history of this nation, and I feel it must be rectified. Here's what I propose to you. This morning when I came to Little Rock, Arkansas, to the Capitol for an interview, I was coming to talk about another subject, and then this ruling came through. But I had put in my pocket this pen that you see me wearing today, because I knew that possibly this ruling would come. So when the ruling was rendered, I took off my Senate pen and I put on the Washington Cruiser flag pen. This pen is a white flag with the tree of liberty on it. And inscribed over this, or under this on this particular flag pen, is the words, an appeal to heaven. You see, George Washington, I'm told, first fought under this flag. He had gone to the Continental Congress to ask them to purchase ships for a navy to fight back against the British Armada. And they said no. I can just almost see it. They said, George, we've done so much. We just had the Boston Tea Party. We better not do this today. And they turned him down. But George knew it was time to stand in the gap, just like it's time to stand in the gap for this nation. He went back to Mount Vernon. He got a hold of some of his friends that were strong men, men of courage, men of conviction, and they purchased 6 schooners. And this was the first flag that they flew. And this inscription, an appeal to heaven, was not necessarily a religious inscription, though it did acknowledge a very important principle. That principle was described by John Locke in his Treatise to Government. And in his Treatise to Government, he said, when you have exhausted all appeals to human authority, in our case, the United States Supreme Court, in their case, to the King of England, when you've exhausted all appeal to humankind and human authority to do what is right, you have nothing further left but an appeal to heaven. And that is just what the colonists did when they formed this nation. They rendered themselves in submission unto an almighty God. They wrote the Declaration of Independence, and they stated in that declaration, when things have gotten so bad, there comes a time of separation, because they had exhausted themselves of any appeal to their government at that time. I don't want our nation to ever get to that point, but I believe that we are able to use the Constitution of the United States to be able to restore federalism, states' rights, rein in an out-of-control judiciary and a Congress, and unfortunately right now a president, by having states to bind together and utilize the power that they have under Article 5. Article 5 to the U.S. Constitution says this: the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislature of 2/3 of the several states. That would be 34 out of 50 states. Those states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states. That's 38 states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. I first call upon the United States Congress. There are 435 men and women in the Congress, in the U.S. House. There are 100 in the U.S. Senate. I'm asking you, all 535 of you, to propose an amendment now to the U.S. Constitution that clearly articulates that marriage is between one man and one woman. I'm calling on each of you now to stand up and do this for the people of this country. If you do not do this for the people of this country, I propose that it's time for the states, 34 states, to move forward with an Article 5 Amendments Convention. Our forefathers put Article 5 in the Constitution for just such a time as this. Our forefathers knew that there could be a potential where the judiciary, Congress, or even the executive might get outside the bounds of what they intended. And I believe we are at just such a time in this country. It is time that the states utilize Article 5 to restore the proper balance of power in our nation. Here's what's important to know about this. Congress cannot stop the 34 states from coming together around amendments to propose for a convention. In fact, many states have already done so. Some people will argue and say, this is something we should not do, amend the Constitution. You know what? I'm very thankful for the Bill of Rights. Those first 10 amendments to the Constitution are the Bill of Rights. I'm also thankful that slavery is no longer allowed in this country. That also was done by amendment. And I'm also very thankful that women can vote. I have 2 young daughters and a wife, and I am glad that they have a say-so in this country and can vote. I would have it no other way. I also believe that we need to protect the lives of unborn children in this country. I cannot believe that we literally have been complicit with 60 million unborn children being killed in America since 1973. You see, things are out of control in this country. It is time to restore the proper balance of power. Using Article 5 with 34 states, what's very critical about this is that some of the very liberal areas of our country are not needed to utilize Article 5. I don't need any of those states that have been supportive of the policies that has really upset the entirety of the nation. I need just 34 God-fearing states with good people, red-blooded Americans, patriots who want to restore integrity to this country to bind together, and let's utilize Article 5 to save the nation. Now, in terms of what we do at this time, many people have reached out to me today. I've had nearly 40,000 people reach out on social media. I can't respond to all of you. You've said, what do we do? What can we do? I've got 2 very important things that I need for you to do, and I want you to listen closely. Number 1, I want you to get on your knees in prayer for this country. We need to call upon God right now in this nation. And we need the power of the Holy Spirit to bind us together as we never have before. There are 80 million evangelical Christians in the United States of America, I'm told. And only 40 million of those Christians are registered to vote. And only half of those Christians actually regularly do vote. That means that if Christians would bind together on the fundamental things that they believe in, they literally would be an unstoppable force to help turn the nation around. Nearly 1/3 of our entire population. I ask every church, every pastor, to plead with your people, to speak to your people. Just as it says in the book of James, faith is great, but it says in James, faith without works is dead. And I'm asking you to not only get on your knees and pray, but I'm asking you to then stand up on your feet and stand with me and everyone else that wants to restore the American values that we once had in this country. And I want you to stand up, register to vote, and become active. The last thing that I want to say today is that I mean no harm and no ill will whatsoever to someone that chooses, number 1, that they want to live a homosexual lifestyle. We all know people who have made that choice. I can maintain friendships and have conversations with people like that. But I object when 3.8% of the population wants to impose their choice on 96.2% of the population that wants to just maintain marriage between a man and a woman as it has always been. I believe that's what we should do. And I believe there should be respect for marriage. I also know that this is but one step that has been bad for the country in the past few years. So friends, I join with you tonight in prayer for this nation, that God will touch this country and turn things around. I also pray that our Supreme Court justices would begin respecting the office that they sit in, that they would know that they are not there to make law and legislate. The legislatures, the legislative branch makes laws. The executive branch enforces laws, and the judiciary interprets laws when there is confusion, but they do not make law. Friends, I believe in the United States of America. I believe in the principles of our founding fathers, and I believe that once again we need to make an appeal to heaven. I'm standing with you for the values and the principles that I was elected to uphold when I was elected to the Arkansas Senate. And in Arkansas, our motto is the people rule. And until somebody tries to take that away from us, the people will continue to rule in this great state. I pray for the country tonight. I ask and I hope that you will stand up, that you will not take this as you've taken so many things by lying down. I pray that you will get up on your feet and you'll say, no, this is not a good ruling. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and God bless America.